Welcome to Duality Check, the podcast where two brothers embark on a journey through the realms of scientific inquiry, the mysteries of the past, and the uncharted frontiers of spirituality. Join us as we explore the wonders of our world and beyond, all while embracing the roles of curious bystanders rather than experts. Together, we'll unravel the tapestry of existence, blending the dichotomies of knowledge and wonder. Get ready to question, ponder, and delve into the dualities that shape our understanding of reality on Duality Check. I'm Drew.
And I'm Dean, and welcome to episode number 91.
Yeah, all right.
Closing in on that one,
Getting close. A few more weeks, handful more weeks, and we'll be at a century of episodes now.
Yeah, dude. So, how's your week, man?
Pretty chaotic. Kid's been sick, trying to figure out who's staying home when and how, and kids came down with hand, foot, and mouth, unfortunately, which is just a common childhood illness, but it sucks because you can't take them to school, can't take them to, can't have them be around any other kids, basically, because it'll just spread like wildfire.
Right. So they both got it?
Yeah, they both got it. So, well, my oldest got it because he's in elementary school, or, pre-kindergarten, basically. So he's around a bunch of, the public school kids. And then he had it for a week. He was out of school. And then after he was fully recovered, then our youngest got it. So we had a whole nother week of we had to stay home with him. So it was just like a lot of long nights because it makes them uncomfortable, like itchy, and like they get a lot of like sores on their hands and their feet and their, literally hand, feet, and mouth. So yeah, that was tough, but gave me a little bit more time to just chill at home and do some stuff.
For sure.
But
so we skipped a week of recording because of that, and we're back.
Yeah, we had one in the queue, so we didn't miss an upload necessarily, but
right.
We did miss one a couple weeks ago. But
that's true. Yeah,
we're kind of in between. Hopefully, in the next week or so, we'll be doing everything out of our new setup where we can just show up and record and not have to do as much setup and prep for just the show itself.
And, hopefully you guys will enjoy seeing that evolve over time because it's going to be just getting it going to start. And then we'll continue improving on it as we go. Yeah,
we'll continue adding things to it and tweaking it. But it'll be a much better, easier setup where we can just kind of show up and start recording instead of having to set up everything you see here, or I guess everything you don't see here, but
it's all below the camera.
Yeah, it's all below and out behind the cameras here, but
it's a pretty makeshift setup. We push his kitchen table up against his desk,
L-shaped
and
desk,
then there's just wires and cables everywhere, so it's a little hectic.
Yeah, but how was your week?
It was good. It was funny. I went to my buddy's, G-Man.
Yeah.
I went to his birthday party last night, and I got 2 gifts.
You got 2 gifts?
Yeah. G-Man
This was one of them?
That book, The Cosmic Serpent, by Jeremy Narby.
Yeah, Jeremy Narby. It says, The Cosmic Serpent, DNA and the Origins of Knowledge by Jeremy.
Yeah. Which I think is essentially, it's a lot about DNA and a lot about like psychedelics and I think about how the body, how we may be designed for them,
Yeah, and I was saying to you, just from reading the little
summary
on the back, I believe this was referenced, or at least the author of this was referenced.
Yeah, I've heard about that book for years and hadn't read it. And I'm pretty sure Graham has talked about it before.
Yeah, I think Graham's referenced it, and I think even
Andrew
Gallimore may have referenced it in his book.
Yeah.
At least the work that Jeremy Narby has done. Sure. I've heard the name for sure.
So I'm excited to read it. G-Man highlighted some of the areas in there, knowing he was going to give it to me. He's like, I circled some things. I was like, this is something I want you to pay attention to. He's like, all right.
Very cool. What was the second gift?
I got a truffle hot sauce for my buddy Dave.
Nice.
Which is supposed to be like a really good hot sauce for pizzas and stuff.
I've heard about the truffle hot. I've never tried it. Actually, that's not true. I've tried it on...
I've tried the Truff brand ones, which are really good.
That's the one I've tried, yeah.
This is a different brand. but it looks really nice.
Okay.
I'm excited for it. I haven't tried it yet.
It's good on hot wings, like on some like chicken wings. That truff hot sauce. It's pretty good on hot wings.
Let's see. I watched a few interesting tidbits. Did you see Jesse Michels' episode this week with, I think her name is Dr. Beatriz Villarroel?
No, I didn't watch that one yet, but I did watch the one previous.
The health one?
No, the one with the guy who said he spoke to. Oh, he was hired by the government. I only got a few minutes into that one. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I was gonna a couple of things that he talks about are just very interesting. The way, and he doesn't really. He seems like one of those like nothing he says is really that extraordinary, like specifically. But it is interesting because it adds context to how the military operates and how those black programs operate.
So what is his basic story?
Basically, he was I'm trying to remember. I think he was Air Force. Yeah, he was Air Force intelligence, and he was there for like communications intelligence. So he was one of the people who was trained to just gather any type of information, whether it be radar or radio or satellite, any kind of intelligence that comes through.
Yeah, like signals intelligence.
Signals intelligence, exactly. He was part of that group, and so that was his main job in the Air Force. But it was early on in his training that he was picked out of the group. He was sent to school to finish his training as the signals intelligence officer. But during his schooling at night, so he would go to school during the day, and then at night he would go on these like black program. He would get picked up at the same spot every day, and they would drive him to an undisclosed location where he would sit in a room with one other person he couldn't communicate with.
Yeah, I think this is about as far in as I got. So then what? Yeah,
so then he would, basically sit there and stare at a screen and try to affect a signal, like some sort of like sine wave.
So some sort of like psionic
training.
Psionic way of affecting like a random number generator or something like that.
Exactly. And it wasn't until later when he was kind of bounced, because after he finished his initial schooling, he was going to another base. So he was bounced from his original handler to another handler, which are basically just different black program commanders throughout the intelligence community. And so eventually he found out that he was selected basically at birth because his mom during birth or during pregnancy, his mom's the fetus inside of his mom, inside of his mom was genetically altered to be more sensitive to this.
Okay.
So at some point...
So she was like an abductee?
Essentially, yeah. He doesn't really describe much of the actual like account of that because I don't think his mom is around anymore.
Okay.
And I don't know that he knew much about it, but he does say that his mom, he is like an only child, and his mom had a very hard time giving birth. And she had, miscarriage after lost birth after, all these different lost births over time. And then he was like miraculously born. And it was during that miracle birth that his DNA was changed or somehow.
How does he end up communicating with the aliens or whatever?
So when they sit him down in this room, they tell him to take this pill and to just sit there, and any type of he's just receiving information in his mind. It's all telepathic.
Okay.
So he's just receiving signals, and for the long time, what he was doing is just sitting there trying to like psionically affect this random number generator, and that's kind of like the training of it. It's just focus your mind so much on this thing that it can be tuned, that's how what I was feeling from it. But then eventually he started getting images and words and was able to like communicate with whatever it was. And even he says, he's like, I couldn't go to court and say that these were aliens that I was speaking to.
Sure.
All I know that it was happening non-verbally in my mind, and that the messages that he was getting were like a lot of the time like a missile site somewhere in the world, or like movements of troops somewhere in the world, and that his job was to take that information and write it down on the computer screen and like type it into whatever program he was had up on his screen. So it was kind of like a higher level intelligence gathering.
Okay.
But he never said that it seemed. He basically said it never seemed like it was meant anything, like, or that it was that valuable to the military to like get this kind of information from him. He felt like this was all testing. So this was like early in this was like in the 90s, I believe. Excuse me. And he believes that it was like just testing. And so in the 90s this was happening, and now Jesse revealed towards the end of the interview that there is a new. So it was PPD is Project Preserve Destiny.
Okay.
And that there's a new program that has been announced by like the French government or something, or having to do something with the French government. That there is something about a new project, Preserve Destiny, just now coming out. So that Jesse thinks that he may have been part of the early development stages of this program.
Interesting.
And that it might be some new or some like long term like psionics program in the black world that's maybe now becoming useful.
The way you're describing it makes it sound distinct from remote viewing. Mm-hmm. Because remote viewing, like, you're sat down and you're given a target, right?
Right.
And the target may just be random numbers or whatever, and you don't know what they mean. But in this case, it seems like he's just sitting and
just waiting to receive,
just receiving, without a target in mind, other than the computer at first, right?
And then there's this pill that he has to take, and I don't know if that's
interesting.
And he did say that the pill like didn't seem as important as they made it seem initially. Like, there was some times where he just forgot to take it, or like maybe he took 2 instead of the 1 that they told him to take, or whatever, or only took 1 instead of the 2 that they told him to take, right? And like he didn't see, like, and it would still happen. He was still getting the images. And maybe that was just more of like a control thing.
Yeah, it could be like a placebo.
Or maybe some way of like giving the person plausible deniability for what it is that they're experiencing. Like maybe it's the drug that I'm taking, some drug I'm taking.
Right.
Giving them some excuse not to believe what it is that they're experiencing. Mm-hmm. So anyways, it was interesting. So like troop movements and stuff, but like what gave him like, he said he couldn't prove that he was talking to aliens, right? But what gave him the impression that he was? But there were some messages that he received as far as like, so they never gave a name or anything like that, but he named the first one Spock, the first entity that he was speaking to, Spock, because it seemed logical and like very to the point and didn't seem to like fluff anything up. He just gave him the, direct. And he said that Spock would give him so I don't remember all the specific, but he says that he feels that the way in like the type of information that he was getting like wasn't a human giving, like it wasn't from a human point of view.
Yeah.
It was like third party it was like a third party information on what is happening on Earth.
Right. Interesting.
That's the way he described it.
So it sounds like he was still gathering intelligence about humans, but through this communication that may not have been with
a human. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And he, like there was never any proof that it was who, there was no names, there's nothing to like prove what it is that was happening, but it was all happening, and he was typing it all into his computer too. So like obviously he doesn't have the transcripts of any of that, but somebody does, right?
Right.
You know, and whoever this Project Preserve Destiny group, Black Project is, if it's true that they're still around and that maybe they're coming out with something, or that they have some sort of like dealings in the today's age of information.
I wonder if someone is good enough to be able to FOIA that stuff.
Yeah, that would be interesting. But it was just a very cool and it's just a cool interview. And the guy was very open. He's like, hey, like, I'm just telling you what I experienced. He wrote a book, obviously, about all this, and that was all what he was referencing and what Jesse was pulling from for the for the interview questions and stuff. But it seemed like Jesse was, because he wrote this a long time ago too, and you know, I think he wrote it like I think he came out in the early 2000s or something like that, mid 2000s, something like that. But Jesse remembered all the information in his book, and he was like reminded by Jesse asking him questions by the specifics of it all, and he was like, you know, like that you're like, not that I don't remember any of what was like, but you remember the specifics and you know what to ask about the things, whereas he just seemed genuine in the way he remembered it,
right? Like
and
he
the
wasn't
way he
constantly coming up with BS.
Right.
Even if his memory was rough, like he would just say, "I don't really remember."
Exactly. Yeah, and he was even the stuff that was kind of fantastical.
Times as far in as I watched, where he would say stuff like that, where it's like, "Look, I could be that I'm misremembering it. I may be wanting to remember it this way, but it could have been this way."
Right. Yeah, he gave it. It just seemed genuine, and you know, as fascinating as it is, like it's all without proof. It's all, you know, just an account, but it's another person that just seems genuine.
Story. Yeah.
It's cool when you piece these things together with all the other things. And I want to do more research about this Project Preserve Destiny and what it might mean, you know, contemporarily from now, and like what might be happening now within the project like that. Yeah,
it makes you wonder like what kind of genres of these like psi research do they have? Like we know about remote viewing. Now we have, you know, inkling into this preserved destiny, but like what other types of things are they doing?
Yeah, and how many
are they trying to do like psionic assassinations or like psionic influencing of world events or whatever.
Could it have gone that far already? You know,
what are the barriers of the things that you can influence with psi abilities? Could be some pretty interesting stuff.
Fascinating. I did recently see and this was just a short clip on Instagram. I didn't go and watch the whole video on how they did it and all that, but it was a group researching hypnosis and techniques, and like how they could potentially, how like a governmental agency or people in black programs with unlimited resources and nobody to account for what they're doing could use hypnosis to affect regular people. And they basically showed like all you would need to do is if you were good at hypnosis and you can hypnotize people, get a group of people into a room that are there for whatever specific reason that you brought them there. It doesn't have to do anything with the hypnosis or anything. You just get them in there and you hypnotize the whole group, right? And so what they did is they did that in a small group. They got a group of people together to do some small, like, you know, group think activity. And they hypnotized like half of them, and they actually were able to get somebody to assassinate like some local celebrity by hypnotizing them and then taking them to that celebrity's like one of their talks, and then having somebody come up to them and say the words into their ear that activates the thing that they were hypnotized into them. They stood up, and you know, obviously in this test, they gave him a gun with blank bullets, but they had the person that they were assassinating act as if he had been shot. And then they they said the words. He stood up, shot into the crowd, and then they had hidden cameras and everything. And then they got to the guy and they're like, "Do you remember what you did?" And like, "Yeah, I went to the show and we had a good time and we watched the lecture," not having any idea of what he had done. And then they showed the girl who walked up to him and said the phrase that brought the hypnotized state onto him. And he's like, "Do you remember talking to this woman and what she had said to you?" And he's like, "No, I don't remember that." And it's all on camera. And then he stood up on camera after she had walked away, probably handed him the gun. And then he shot the gun and then sat back down as if nothing happened. She came over, grabbed the gun and then said something else and then like deactivated the hypnotizing and then walked away.
Dang.
And he was like mortified.
What is this that you're talking about?
This was I don't remember the research group, but it was just an Instagram like video, like a 2.5 minute video where they kind of condensed it all.
Yeah.
I wanted to find the longer video to see how the whole thing played out and what they actually did, but I haven't done that yet. I think I have it saved, so I'll have to do that. But it was just to show that it's not impossible to find
to do this sort of Manchurian candidate type thing.
Like, and if you could do it with somebody who's so unassuming, and somebody with a larger budget, with more resources, more time, with a larger study or group sample size of group and stuff.
Yeah.
It's not impossible, is my point, and probably their point too.
Right.
It's not something that's so outlandish that you should just, the government could never or would never do that kind of thing. It's like, well.
Well, they definitely would if they could.
Yeah, it's like if
the
they
question is, can they?
Yeah, and if they can, then they probably would.
Right.
Anyway,
this the Beatriz Villarroel one. So I brought this up on one of the previous podcasts, but like now that he's done the whole episode with her, and I've gotten to see it a little more in depth. Actually, why don't we watch this video introduction of it by Jesse.
These short flashes and not streaks, they are associated with things that are extremely flat and extremely reflecting.
Wow.
Like mirrors.
Like mirrors. This is from the Palomar Observatory before we had satellites in space. How many of these transients did you find?
Our original sample is around 105,000 transients from just the northern hemisphere.
Dr. Beatriz Villarroel holds a PhD in astrophysics. She's won the L'Oreal UNESCO Prize for Women in Science. She's currently an associate professor at Stockholm University, where her research runs the gambit from active galactic nuclei to transient phenomena in the search for intelligent life.
If I look at everything that I learned in the last years, I will be fair. I don't think we are alone. I think we have company.
In other words, Dr. Villarroel is someone who really knows her shit when it comes to the night skies and cosmos.
My name is Beatriz Villarroel, and I'm a very curious person.
And it's precisely these illustrious mainstream astronomical accomplishments which make her latest paradigm-shattering results all the more shocking and threatening to the establishment.
Doctor, let me first say that your reputation...
Actually, first, could you ask the gentleman with the firearms to wait outside?
Dr. Villarroel has found over 100,000 light-reflecting unidentified objects on the plates of the Palomar Observatory, the most prominent observatory in use in the 1950s. The only thing is, she detected these objects before the first satellite, Sputnik, ever orbited Earth. You heard me right. A conventionally renowned astronomer has detected over 100,000 UFOs before humans ever put anything in space. And the debunkers are flailing in their attempts to take her down. Do you feel like the world is ready to accept this?
So yeah, that's the teaser for it.
Is this one of those people? One of the researchers who are using the old plates from the
she
observatory?
she has access to these telescopes, like the Palomar, these old ones. The way they worked is they would have these giant glass plates with like a emulsion on them, and that would be what the photo was taken on when they would do these captures.
Right.
And so she has access to like the archive of these plates for the Palomar Observatory.
I remember you mentioning this now. Yeah.
Yeah. And she specifically dug out the ones before Sputnik.
Yeah.
To
just have should be zero
chance
garbage
that
out
any
there.
Human craft,
stuff.
any satellite, any space junk, anything like that.
Yeah.
It should be a
pretty clean.
Yeah. As clean as it can be, since we couldn't put the stuff in space yet, right?
Right.
And yeah, so they would find these photos where like there'd be these like star formations, but then if you look on a different night, they're gone.
Yeah, one frame over, basically.
Yeah. And then she was able to do, this is the really interesting part, is that she was able to do calculations, because she knew like what was the date and time of the photo, and she knew when, or like where, what part of the sky they were taking a photo of, right?
Right.
And so she was able to calculate how many of these transients that they found seemed to, well, she was able to compare transients that were in Earth's shadow versus transients that weren't, right? So like if you have the sun shining and then you got the earth is casting a shadow behind it, right? Mm-hmm. And so if there's something in space, if it's still in an area outside of Earth's shadow, it can be reflecting the sun back and making it visible.
Right.
But as soon as it goes into Earth's shadow, it can no longer reflect the sunlight back. Mm-hmm. And so what she found is that her data did show a dip in transients
as they went through
in accordance with Earth's shadow, which
means they're moving,
which means that they're objects rather than
distant galaxies.
The skeptical argument is that these are just like defects in the photo technique, like defects in the film or the emulsion or whatever.
Yeah.
Which she says, like, no, it's definite that some of them are probably, but if they were defects, they wouldn't follow this pattern of dipping when you're in the Earth's shadow.
Right. They would still be affected even through the shadow images, or
right. A defect doesn't care whether you're in the Earth's shadow or not.
Right. Because it's on top of it, basically.
Right. And then the other thing there's another scientist who like took her data and then used would compare it against like known UFO sightings and against like known nuclear testing dates and times, and he found statistically significant like grouping of these transients with known like nuclear tests.
Interesting. So before, okay. So it's like as if they were coming to see.
Yeah,
something was happening around these nuclear tests,
and then he also looked like at famous UFO sightings, like for instance the Washington D.C. flap in 1952. The 2 weekends in July where those sightings were held in D.C.
Right.
She also found a lot more of the transients then too.
Wow.
So,
and she's saying upwards of 105,000 of these instances of these quote unquote crafts,
right, of which not all of them are going to be like actual objects. Some of them will be defects, but based on the math, based on the calculations of the transients that are sensitive to then she thinks it's probably about 70% of them, 30 to 70% of them are legit objects.
Even 30% at the low end.
Yeah. Well, she was like, even if 1%, I would have been happy.
Absolutely.
But to find the number she's finding is pretty crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty pretty impressive work. And
hopefully it gets picked up instead of tried to be shelved and just ignored.
It also, her paper got published. Like, she got published in Nature. She got published by big journals. So, like, this is legit peer-reviewed science out there now.
Yeah.
And she's in, basically the whole thing is like, it's inviting others to do the same with other plates of other, plate archives from other telescopes that were active during those years. Because if we can find coincidences of transients on certain dates between different telescopes, that would be a huge deal.
Or if we find, did she look at 1945 Roswell?
I forget it, but yeah.
That would be an interesting
I don't know
one.
if they talked about that one specifically, but anyways, really cool stuff.
Very cool.
And then, we're ready for a break, but maybe we can come back. We can go over this. But Sabine Hossenfelder, she's like one of these science YouTubers, like a PhD. She's super smart. She lands on the skeptical side of most stuff, and she gives a pretty interesting review of the paper too. So I think we should check that out as well.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break, and then we'll check that out on the other side of this break.
All right. We'll be
back. See y'all in a minute.
Ik had het Annelies check.
Wat is dat? Oh, platen. Merci.
Young love. Yeah, can you remember? Do you remember? When your smile was pure, before the world was cruel. We were just fools in love. Pain for the poet is fuel, and only fools fall in love. Well, I should have stayed in school instead of spilling all my guts. Inebriated fool throwing up. Life's an elevator ride waiting for you to press your luck and search for more. We're all questioning the same things, just a different daydream. All the same matrix, basic instructions before leaving Earth. Leave a legacy worth being heard for being birthed. Words wrestle in my mind, intertwined with my memories. Dancing to the rhythm of the melody. Destiny's calling, falling deeper into ecstasy. Pen and pad daily next to me, cause I know life's testing me. Mercy me, things just ain't what they used to be. Consider this the eulogy, beautifully we connected. Before she hit the exit, I left her this message for eternity, hoping she'll return to me. And that's when she turned to me. Is this what you accused me of? Foolish love, I said certainly, even though I wasn't sure. But at the moment it felt pure, young love.
Welcome back.
All right. Welcome back to segment 2.
That was M.Born, Young Love from the Born Experience mixtape.
Well, let's hop into this Sabine Hossenfelder.
Yeah, let's check this out. All right.
Today I have a group of astrophysicists who found the most convincing evidence of unidentified aerial phenomena that I've seen. Concretely, they say they have images of likely artificial objects that were in orbit around Earth before we had the first satellites up there. I've had a look. This research comes from astrophysicists at Nordita in Stockholm, and they just published 2 papers. They used a catalogue of old photographic plates from 1949 to 1957 taken in California at Caltech that have been digitized. Why until 1957? Because in 1957 the Russians launched the first ever satellite into orbit, or at least the first satellite that we know of. In those scans of old photographic plates, they look for bright spots that appear only briefly, which are called transients. They did this first by computer analysis, but then also by just looking at the images. Here is an example of 2 images of the exact same spot in the sky taken briefly after each other. One shows, well, something, the other one not. But these old image scans can contain defects objects and dust and so on, so they only considered cases where the transients were in the same place in multiple scans of the same photographic plate. Then one can be sure that at least it's not an artifact from the scan. They found a total of 5 such transients, and they aren't single dots. They are configurations of 4, 5, and in one case 6 dots in a row. And one of those with 5 in a row is dated to July 27th, 1952. No, that isn't my birthday. This is the weekend of one of the famous Washington, D.C. UFO days known as the Washington Flap. On this day, and also a week earlier, air traffic controllers at the city's main airport and a nearby Air Force base said they saw things on radar that shouldn't have been there. Some pilots and people on the ground also reported unusual lights. The fuss was big enough that the Air Force held a press conference on July 29th and blamed atmospheric phenomena.
We can say that the recent sightings are in no way connected with any secret development by any department of the United States.
But back to the astrophysicists with their papers. They also look at all these transients, so not just those that appear in multiple scans. From this, they find that the transients are far less likely to appear in the Earth's shadow. This is statistically significant at 22 sigma. What this means is that the transients are likely to be from something that reflects sunlight, and it makes it unlikely that it's something to do with the camera. If that wasn't already confusing enough, in the other paper, they look at correlations between all transients and reports of unidentified aerial phenomena and nuclear tests. They find a weak correlation with UAP reports, but that transients were 45% more likely within a one-day window around a nuclear bomb test. This pattern is hard to blame on bad film alone. They consider different explanations in the paper, such as foreground objects, but these would be much more blurry, or camera glitches, but these would not disappear in the Earth's shadow. It could have something to do with the nuclear fallout, but again, why would this disappear in the Earth's shadow? Beatriz Villarroel, one of the authors of both papers, told me by email, "With my existing limited knowledge, these objects look highly artificial to me. Only something really planar and reflective can give off those transients. Any round or rough body would result in streaks, and I'm thinking mirrors, glass, or polymers. But who put them there at those high altitudes? It's open for speculation. It's possible, but it seems highly unlikely to me that any nation had multiple satellites in the sky before the Russian Sputnik launch. This is because it isn't all that easy to launch a rocket without anyone noticing, and you can't do it from anywhere either. It's possible that these objects are of natural origin, but then what are they? Or are they image artifacts that are more likely to occur in sunlight? Maybe something to do with solar wind? I don't have a good explanation, and honestly, I don't have a strong opinion about this one way or the other. I just find it very curious. Even if this is a natural phenomenon, it's very curious. 5 dots in a row? That's very disciplined dust. What do you think about this? Is it aliens? Let me know in the comments. Yes.
We'll let you know right here. Sorry.
Yeah. Pretty interesting, huh?
Yeah, I mean, even if it is natural, I'd love to figure it out. Like,
right.
You know,
right.
Are there, comets or asteroids or anything that could like explain this being natural? Or maybe the breakaway society that has been living on Earth for millions of years that has actually had these things in, orbit long before we ever got anything into orbit.
Yeah, I mean, right. Like some past civilization.
Past civilization or current civilization that is like a true breakaway.
You could imagine like pre-flood Atlantean era, like maybe they did have space travel, maybe they had satellites and they haven't all deorbited yet.
Right.
Although it's hard to imagine how they wouldn't have deorbited unless they have some sort of really efficient onboard
power system
that allows them to make their
I mean, if they were using solar
adjustments,
they're using some sort of solar energy capabilities or
all I know is that with our satellites, they carry a limited amount of onboard fuel and they need to use it to keep in orbit.
So
and once they run out of fuel, the satellite it's only so long until it will
start to fall.
Most satellites in orbit, they're still technically within the atmosphere of the Earth, and they are hitting some sort of wind resistance that slows them down and causes them to fall over time.
Yeah, so the trajectories need to be altered on occasion.
Interesting. Yeah. So
cool,
the fact that someone
way.
like Sabine has so positive a view of the paper and it's like, hey, like this is legit science that they did here. Like, it's the most convincing evidence of something
going on.
Yeah,
through
so
these
it's
photos.
still not like to a full skeptic view. Like this doesn't go so far as to prove what it is. It just says that there is something that was up there.
Yeah, it just sucks that everything that's so interesting in science right now is like just on the edge of being understood.
Yeah.
Just outside our grasp.
But the statistical connection to nuclear sites is pretty strong stuff, in my
like
opinion.
40% or 30-something percent.
Yeah.
So crazy.
All right, cool. So you brought some Comet 3i Atlas stuff?
Yeah, so this is something that happened over the last weeks that NASA had quietly activated its Planetary Defense Network for the 3i Atlas without saying anything. So it says, buried in tonight's official MPEC 2025 UI 42, the Minor Planet Center's internal bulletin is an editorial notice that says it all. Announcement of IAWN Comet astrometry campaign, November 27th, 2025 through January 27th, 2026. The campaign will target Comet 3i Atlas C/2025 N1. Be clear that this is not a Reddit rumor, 4chan leak. This is straight from the UAE or UAU.
The IAU.
IAU, hosted on Harvard's Minor Planets Planet Center. So the IAWN is the International
Asteroid Warning Network.
Yep. And they are issuing this like warning basically, or I guess they're activating their network so that they can, project defense scenarios. But it says that the same group that coordinates global tracking in planetary is the same group that coordinates global tracking in planetary defense scenarios. So this is what's happening for the first time in history. An interstellar object, namely 3i Atlas, has been formally enrolled in a planetary defense level observation campaign. They're calling it a test of improved astrometry methods. In other words, the object isn't behaving like it should. The bulletin admits it. Cometary bodies are extended. Features that can be systematically pull their centroid measurements off their central brightness peak, meaning that the light and the mass don't line up. Exactly the issue astronomers have been speaking about for months. So 3i Atlas's photometric center is offset from its orbital predictions. So they're doing a workshop, I guess, on this November 10th. They have a kickoff meeting November 25th. global observing window is November 27th to January 27th. Closeout telecon February 3rd. The window covers perihelion through Earth's near pass when 3i atlases will be the closest, brightest, and most unstable. So after months of near total silence, NASA, ESA, and IAU just activated the Planetary Defense Network, but they did it under the cover of an astrometry exercise. No headlines or press kit, just a quiet admission that the world's largest observatories will now point at one object, 3i Atlas. So they say, let's be clear about this right now. This isn't normal. The IAWN doesn't organize global campaigns for routine comets. They test coordination on bodies that matter, potential hazards, anomalies, or high-interest targets. And you don't need to improve astrometry unless your target refuses to follow standard math. So yes, they finally broke the silence, but instead of a briefing, we got a bulletin. And instead of transparency, we got a PDF. They can call it a training exercise all they want, but every telescope from the Mauna Kea in Chile is being synced on one object. That's not a drill.
Okay. So I think this isn't necessarily proof of anything per se.
No, of course
not. The thing is Comet 3i Atlas is a very interesting target. It is.
Well, and it's becoming so popular now in this just the zeitgeist now.
Well,
so many people are paying attention to it.
It's the only interstellar object we currently can point our telescopes at, right? That is within the solar system. So it is a good test of a planetary defense network.
Sure.
Because we want to be able to track objects like this. And then specifically, this one is interesting for another reason, is because its perihelion is happening while it's blind to us, while it's on the other side of the sun from us, right? And so because we can't directly track it, there is some unknown as to specifically where it will be when we are able to see it again.
Yeah.
Because it's already been acting strangely in certain ways. And so because of that, we don't necessarily have a perfect prediction for where it'll end up being. So this is, I think this is actually a great exercise for a planetary defense network to be able to, they want to be able to pick up the target as soon as possible, as soon as it comes out from behind the sun.
Yeah. But why
and
not?
So
why not make it a big
test
thing?
how quick we can find it, how close to, how quickly we can see it, even though it's behind the sun, right? Like there's a bunch of tests of our capabilities that I think are important towards doing global
this type
defense,
of stuff in the
right?
future. Yeah.
Like we want to make sure we're testing our blind spots specifically, and this is a great test for that, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think it's a little weird that they're not like making a big deal about it and like, yeah, this is gonna be a great test, just like you're saying. Like, say something similar to what you're saying.
Yeah,
and I don't know. I haven't seen like all of their thing, all of the release of this information, other than this and a couple. I did read the PDF that they linked on this, but
is that the link right below
the
here?
top? Yeah, the top one there. The Minor Planet Center.
Oh, that's the other thing you had.
Yeah. But it's basically just what we had already seen, but it's, pretty cut and dry. There's nothing flashy about it. There's no, it would seem like if you're going to do something like this, especially because like generally I feel like people are more aware now and are more interested now in planetary comet defense and stuff like that too. Like this would be a great thing to just like flash everywhere, get some,
Yeah, the thing
get some interest into the stuff like this.
Look how much people are already throwing a fit about 3i Atlas, and if they do things to make it seem like it's something other than what they think it is, then people could go real nuts over it.
Well, this isn't the way you go about it.
Yeah.
Making it kind of secretive and having to have people like going to a place like this to find this PDF makes it seem like you're hiding something. As opposed to just saying, hey, we're going to test out our planetary defense system on 3i Atlas because we don't have anything else necessarily to test it on. So it's a perfect object, just like you had, just laid out. It's a perfect object to test these things on it.
Even if they do put that out, like, that doesn't stop people who are conspiracy minded from bending that towards still.
Sure. I mean, that's going to happen either way.
And the thing is, from a standard scientific view, like, you got people like Avi Loeb out there trying to make this seem, from their perspective, trying to make this seem like it's an alien. They don't want to feed into that type of frenzy, even though it's not actually what Avi Loeb was doing. He's just saying it's a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
But even someone like him saying that it's a possibility gets a bunch of people who are willing to take anything and they'll run with it. So
Avi Loeb just announced a bunch of stuff on Joe Rogan.
What did he say?
The episode hasn't come out yet.
Oh.
But they did a post online where somebody said, or they basically said that he's putting basically a telescope on top of the dome in Las Vegas.
Uh-huh.
And they're going to be like tracking the 3i Atlas and stuff like that too themselves.
Why would you put a telescope on top of the dome in Las Vegas?
I don't know exactly what his plan is. It was just like a post to basically hype up the episode that's going to be coming out of him on Joe Rogan.
I just feel like Las Vegas is the last place you want a telescope. Like, there's so many lights everywhere.
Yeah, a lot of lights. But yeah, that could have just been part of the show of it all. But I don't know. We'll find out in his episode that comes out soon.
Yeah, interesting. All right.
Yeah, so
keep an eye
I'm
out
assuming
for
it's going to come out in the next few days. If not, maybe tomorrow. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
But a lot of stuff going on with the 3i Atlas. A lot of people interested by this. So.
Yeah. So this is from the PDF here. The minor planet electronic circulars contain information on unusual minor planets, routine data on comets and natural satellites, and occasional editorial announcements as they're published on behalf of the Division F of the International Astronomical Union by the Minor Planet Center, Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory, Cambridge, Massachusetts. So it says, announcement of IAWM Cometary Astrometry Campaign, November 27th to January 27th, 2026. Comets present unique challenges for accurate astrometric measurements of orbit predictions. Cometary bodies are extended with morphological features, coma, and tails that can systematically pull their centroid measurements off their brightness peak, presenting challenges to estimate comet trajectories. Right. Okay. So it's saying, like, because they got these big tails, then those are the bright part.
Yeah.
It's hard to actually target the exact
body of the
object
in order to actually track to the trajectory and the orbit of it. To accurately track it, at least, because you could be tracking pieces of it, but those pieces aren't necessarily going to stay with the entirety of the body the entire way.
Right. And when you're talking these gravitic interactions, like minor details can make a big adjustment.
And because we know the tail moves supposedly with the 3i Atlas, it's the opposite, but with comets, the tail moves opposite the sun, so it's going to travel into different.
Yeah, 3i has it both ways. It's got the traditional tail, but it also has one that points sunward,
which is interesting.
At least at sometimes. The International Asteroid Warning Network announces a Comet campaign for the same dates to introduce methods for improving astrometry from comet observations. The campaign will target 3i Atlas to exercise the capability of the observing community to extract accurate astrometry. To prepare for the campaign, we'll hold a workshop on techniques to correctly measure comet astrometry. Okay, so it's like a workshop to like.
Yeah, it looks like they're trying to get people involved and like teach them and show them how they're going to be doing it.
They want to be able to test the accuracy of their ability to track.
And they're going to show people how to like you can register for this and learn how it is that they're going to be doing this.
I mean, yeah, I don't necessarily make something huge out of this.
I think it's interesting still.
Yeah. I think I'm glad they're doing something like this, to be honest.
I wouldn't say it's an admission of anything.
No.
Like a clear admission of any kind of like secretism. But I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situations where it's like, if you don't just outright say what you're trying to do in like the press.
Right.
But I get why you would not want to as well. Like, it's obvious, especially with people that are going to jump on board any kind of conspiracy.
I came across this right as we were setting up for the show, but
okay.
You want to check this out real quick?
Sure.
Saw some interesting stuff. And so what I will tell you is that footage, the fact that it was dead drop to Burleson, I'm certain that there's more of where that comes from, and we are going to push for the declassification of stuff that we've seen because I think the American people deserve to see it. But I think, you're never going to have the U.S. government admit or try to explain something if it's also somewhat not specifically pertaining to national defense. So if it's not tech that we've made, not involving a foreign government, I think that you're going to see a direct statement from that. What's interesting, and I kind of went into this with Joe Rogan, is when we were talking to some of the witnesses, they don't call them extraterrestrial. They call them interdimensional. There's also this aspect of these things defying physics as we know it. And then you look into texts that were removed from the Bible, like the Book of Enoch, that actually specifically address technologies, if you will, that were given to mankind or of entities not of human origin, non-human intelligence. So these are all things to consider when addressing the topic. But based on what I've seen, not speculating, based on the evidence that I've seen, there's something out there. And based on what I'm saying is it's not. I think that it's along the lines of that video that you just saw.
Have they shown you? Okay, so
I have to be careful because I could get in trouble if I divulge what I've been shown in a skiff. So what I can tell you is I'm just telling you as me, not specifically addressing skiff stuff, that they're real. And I'm not the only one. You just saw the Secretary of State in a documentary addressing the same thing. I know it's a mind loop, right? But like Pinellas County, where I specifically represent, there's actually a high number of these reported sightings. But it's not just there. A lot of the members on the task force or that gavel into this, first of all, it's bipartisan and bicameral. Like we've had pretty much everyone's like circulated at one point, right? Through task questions and whatnot. But members in Alaska, the member of Alaska specifically has a lot of reports of this. People that, represent these areas. When you get calls to the office, I've seen a lot of kooky stuff too that I know it's like crazy, like provably false. That's AI, CGI, whatever. But then you have the stuff that you can't explain. And then you have the attacks on the witnesses that come forward to testify, which if it wasn't real, why would you try to be discrediting someone? Why is the Department of the VA leaking people's records to the press if it's not real, right? It's like if if you're being told not to look under that rock, you might look under the rock. And so that actually happened to David Grush when he came forward to testify, is his medical records were leaked to the press.
Yeah, that kind of stuff's crazy. Like, it's kind of counterintuitive. Like, let's try to discredit this guy. Well, you're crediting him by discrediting him.
Right.
By trying to actively make it seem like he's crazy and, like, make it sound like he's got just PTSD and everything he's saying is crazy.
That's on to something. Yeah.
He served in our military, but look, he's clearly got PTSD. Like, who cares? He's telling like that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just want the non-runaround answers and the photos and the videos and give me what you got. Like,
it is pretty exhausting.
We are just as intelligent as you people. We can handle this. Like, I think it makes me think that they're waiting until they think like people can handle it. But
it makes me think like they want to be able to reverse engineer it first. That's really the thing.
Control the narrative, control the out.
Because if it becomes worldwide accepted, then a lot of minds are going to focus on the technology and how it works all at once. And
they don't even
the chances that they're going to be the ones who control it is a lot lower. If they can keep it secret, and they can keep most people not believing it, and they can keep a bunch of black programs that are collecting the stuff and trying to reverse engineer the stuff, throwing more resources at it than any other country, who most of them don't believe this stuff is real. Right? Like they're trying to manufacture an advantage for themselves to be able to crack this technology before anyone else.
I think they already have the advantage, and they've had the advantage for a long time. And I think it's more about controlling the disclosure so far as into like, you know, make it so it falls down a narrative that they want it to fall down, you know, like,
yeah,
I think that they are getting the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the type of information that's really out there on these objects or whatever, interdimensional beings or whatever. Like, I feel like these black programs, whoever is in control of these, I do think that...
Interesting that she brought up the Book of Enoch, too.
I know, yeah. I was going to say, like, and how far back can this really go, right? Because, like, in my mind, just speculating, but in my mind, it is possible that this goes back millennia.
Yeah.
Like, the idea and, like, the information that it is true and real could go back to these, like, founding families, like we've talked about before, like these families who have the knowledge, who have had the knowledge of we are not alone and the universe is not what we think it is, existence is not what we think it is. All of these things could go so far back that it's getting to a point where they cannot control, like it's going to just become knowledge at some point, and they're losing control of the control they've had for millennia. And they're still trying to like just grasp onto it for as long as they can still. But eventually with AI and with all of these new technology that are coming out, it's going to become public knowledge at some point, in my view. Yeah. And that they're just kind of holding on to it for dear life for as long as they can still to control the narrative. And then
if they can crack the technology before anyone else and actually manufacture it, I mean, that's world domination level stuff, right? Like that's
at least economically and like all that, right?
Like it changes the calculation on war, right? Like the thing with like nuclear war and the whole Cold War is like mutually assured destruction, right? Like the protection against someone shooting a nuke at you is that you're going to shoot a bunch of nukes at them. Right. And so unless you're willing to destroy your whole country, you're not going to fire one at another country. All that can go out the window if you got a freaking fleet of UFOs that can shoot these things out of the sky before they land. And so now all of a sudden it's not mutually assured destruction anymore. And you can send out missiles across the world without worrying about the retaliation. So things like that, it would vastly change the landscape of war if only one country had this ability first.
Which is scary.
Yeah.
Which is scary to think.
So it's a highly valuable thing. I mean, like, we're talking the ability to like gain possession of whole countries worth of economies and resources, and people would do crazy stuff to maintain that.
It's true. It's very true.
I just don't buy that it's worry about public panic. I don't think
No, I don't think so. I think that might be and had been the outwardly facing reason to people, to the public. But I don't think that's the real reason. I wouldn't suspect that that's the real reason. There's something going on behind the scenes that they're worried about, or they, you know, because once it becomes general knowledge that these things are real, like we were talking about earlier, like just the acknowledgement that it is real and like generally openly acknowledged, then all of these countries and all of these scientists who have had pieces of the puzzle at one point are going to start going back to that research and back to those things and start to like, okay, let's look at this from that lens now. And now let's reopen these cases that we closed, decades
Suddenly
ago.
A bunch of people start looking into electrogravitics.
Yeah.
When they
thought that it was just a, dead end.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very fascinating either way, but we'll leave you guys on that. What do you guys think? Do you guys agree that we should all have this knowledge, or do you guys think that it's good to keep this stuff secret for as long as possible to maintain the control of it? But I would love to hear from you. But we're going to take a quick break, and we'll see you guys in a few minutes. All right.
I'll try to this pink rectangle over lines that time has scribbled, but life can get so tangled and the soul can be quite brittle, so burdened by history, love burned alive instantly. You don't wanna hurt no more, 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 na, na, find your will inside the hope, and hope within the stern conviction of eyes and mouth and lips and breath of whispered repetition, so burdened by history, love burned alive instantly. You don't wanna hurt no more, 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 na, 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 na,
Welcome back.
All right, Joan.
That was Stevie Nader, Hurt No More. And yeah, shall we
get back into some OAHSPE and probably finish out this chapter?
Yeah, this Book of Jehovah.
Yeah, the Book of Jehovah.
So if you remember in the last chapter, there was like a man taken up into heaven and like given a tour.
Right.
And if you recall also, there was like angels that came onto the new earth and like made bodies for themselves and then like procreated with some of the beings and created man.
Right.
And then we're tasked to watch over them
because of their injunction or
their role in creating them. Right?
Yeah, right.
All right, so we're on chapter 7 now. Jehovah said, "Let a sign be given to the inhabitants of the earth that they may comprehend Dan Ha." So that's DAN', which I think.
Yeah, just to remind everybody, there's a lot of these like
weird words,
terms and stuff that they use in this book that we may have to pull up the dictionary here.
They have a glossary.
Yeah, the glossary of the book.
I should mark it too. Yeah, so Danha, synonymous with arc, the time from one dawn of Dan to another, which is usually about 3,000 years. See the Book of Osiris, chapter 4. So a Dan is like an
age?
An age, yeah. It says here for a Dan, a time when a solar system travels through the region of relatively intense spiritual light, which is an area where eth predominates, lacking corporeal content in solution. Its effects last for a period of time it takes the solar system to pass through it. So, yeah, like an age, like a 3,000-year age, basically.
Okay.
Let me put one of our markers here, because that will be useful to go back to. All right. Yeah. So, yeah. Let a sign be given to the inhabitants of the earth that they may comprehend Dan Ha in the firmament of heaven. For even as I bequeath to the earth a time for creating the living, and a time for angels to come and partake of the first fruits of morality and immorality, so shall man at certain times and seasons receive testimony from my hosts in heaven.
Okay.
So there's certain time periods where
they're more
to get information.
Yeah, there's like maybe a closer bridge between the heavens and earth, and maybe there's ages. I mean, you just gave the definition, but the Dan is like an age. So that Dan Ha is like the age of Ha, like the Ha is the specific age.
Yeah, I don't know what the distinction with the Ha was. I thought it was more of like a synonymous with arc.
So maybe, okay.
So it looks like a Dan is more like a general age, maybe, and a Dan Ha is like a specific type of age.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
And Jehovah caused the earth and the family of the sun to travel in an orbit, the circuit of which requireth of them 4,700,000 years. And he placed in the line of the orbit at distances of 3,000 years Ethereal lights, the which places, as the earth passeth through, angels from the second heaven come into its corporeal presence. As ambassadors, they come in companies of hundreds of thousands and tens of thousands, and then these are called the Ethereal hosts of the Most High.
So these 3,000-year cycles, ages, seem like orbital planes that they're traveling on, in a sense, like that they're like coming close to.
Yeah, so it's saying like as our solar system is orbiting around the galaxy, there's these like strips that we pass through
that have different effects on
Yeah, but they're also saying specifically that there are like these spirits there.
Within that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
That are the hosts of the Most High.
Of that ethereal age or whatever that they're passing through. Okay.
Not as single individuals come they, not for a single individual mortal come they. And Jehovah gave this sign to man on earth, which is to say, in the beginning of the light of Dan-ha, the spirits of the newly dead shall have power to take upon themselves the semblance of corporeal bodies and appear and talk face to face with mortals. Every 3,000 years gave Jehovah this sign on earth, that those who learned the powers and capacities of such familiar spirits might bear testimony in regard to the origin of man on earth.
That's cool. That's interesting. Like, as it passes through this place, this region, the recently deceased of that region are able to then take on corporeal mortal beings life while we are still traveling through this 3,000 year old. So over the 3,000 years that we are traveling through this, there are interactions with these ethereal beings who are taking on life.
I took it more as like at the beginning of each of these ages, we pass through some sort of thicket that allows like the dead here to take on forms and communicate with the living.
Yeah, because it says corporeal and mortal life as if it hadn't been that before. So I don't know. Yeah, either way, it sounds like something's happening.
In which places, as the earth passeth through, angels from the second heaven come into its corporeal presence. Yeah.
And then the recently deceased, it said, are able to take on the corporeal mortal forms in order to interact with the humans.
It says, the spirits of the newly dead shall have the power to take upon themselves the semblance of corporeal bodies.
Yeah.
So it's like every 3,000 years or so, there's this event that causes the dead to be able to talk to the living.
Yeah, and take on some form of
it says life. The semblance of corporeal form. So it's like they can appear as though they're corporeal.
Yeah, so maybe even just communications, right? Maybe even just the ability to communicate.
It sounds like a All Hallows Eve type thing, like the Day of the Dead, but like a 3,000 year period version of it, right?
Yeah, I'm curious if it's every 3,000 years and it's like a smaller time period for us, or if it's like the entire 3,000 years, it's possible for this to take place.
I think it's probably like a shorter time every 3,000 years.
But like, so it'd be like maybe a year or something, like within a year of our time. But for them, it
dude, can you imagine? Like that would cause some crazy panic. Like,
well, maybe it is like this idea of All Hallows Eve and the Day of the Dead, and maybe not every year for us, right? But like that's where it comes from.
Yeah,
is that idea? That idea comes from this time period in which it is real.
Could you imagine though that like all of the recently deceased just like appearing to people?
Be crazy.
En masse.
Yeah, that'd be crazy. That'd be pretty startling.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not expecting it.
Jehovah said, and when it shall come to pass in any of the times of Dan-ha that these signs are manifest, man shall know that the hosts of the Most High come soon after. So once you see the spirits of the dead, the hosts of God are coming afterwards. Let him who will become wise enumerate the great lights of my serpent, for in such times I set aside things that are old and establish my chosen anew. The serpent.
Yeah, I wonder what that's in reference to.
Enumerate the great lights of my serpent. In the time of the earth, when man was brought forth from mortal to immortal life, the earth passed beyond Simu, and the angels of heaven remained with corporeal man, but not in the semblance of mortals, but as spirits, and by virtue of their presence strove to make man wise and upright before Jehovah. Upon the earth the number of such angels was millions. To these angels spake Jehovah, saying, Behold, the work ye have taken in hand. It was commanded to you all to partake in the fruits of the earth, save the fruit of the tree of life, which is the knowledge of the earth and heaven, lest ye lose your inheritance in Etheria. Behold, ye now have sons and daughters on the earth. By your love to them are ye became bound spirits of the lower heaven, until ye redeem them in wisdom and power, even to the 6th generation. Ye shall not again arise and inherit my emancipated heavens. So these angels that came down and created man by banging whatever
moved
whatever pre-man thing was here.
Yeah.
Created man and then was basically told you got to be guardian angels to these people. You are now responsible for making them spiritually wise for 6 generations.
Yeah, and he said that they
until they're wise and all of their offspring are wise for 6 generations, you're stuck here.
Yeah, and
which is a hell of a task.
They don't take on the semblance of corporeal life, but they are still able to manipulate or enlighten or help guide.
Maybe they can take the role of answering prayers or interacting with shamans, or things like that, or appearing to the people who seem to have more ability for that type of communication,
or even telepathically, right? So if there are telepaths and stuff in the world that are, or the guy that Jesse Michels, I can't remember his name, but they're tapping into something,
or the non-speakers,
the autistic non-speakers,
yeah,
tapping into a whole nother realm and living in a telepathic world, basically.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting.
Yeah. To which end ye shall be co-workers with one another in system and order. In my name shall ye become an organic body and known as the heaven of the earth, or lower heaven, which shall travel with the earth. And I will allot unto you a chief who is wise and experienced in founding heavenly kingdoms, and he shall appoint from amongst you officers, messengers, and ashars and asaphs, and ensenors. So we got some new terms here. Ashars and asaphs. That's ASHARS. Let's see what the ashars. I think that's a guardian angel type thing. Let me see. Ashar.
Bashar?
Yeah, like Bashar, but without the B. Guardian angels who are appointed over mortals to be with them during life. They deliver the spirit in time of death into the hands of the asaphs. They also keep record of the mortal, which is also given to the asaphs in heaven, along with newborn spirit, which is also called Esyan. Ashers are next in rank below Luis. Man, dude.
Luis?
Yeah.
What's Luis got to do with it?
That's LOO'S.
Okay.
Generally accepted policy is that these angels remain anonymous during their ward's lifespan. Any angels who make their presence known are not guardian angels. Then the Asafs are angels in heaven whose office it is to receive the spirit when a mortal dies and to bear it to the place prepared for it. They are in organic associations. Their rank is next below Ashars.
Okay. So they're kind of the clerical, like...
Yeah, they remind me of like the Hermes type role. Like they're helping the soul travel to the place of its afterlife, basically.
Yeah, cataloging
like the guardian angel will like pass them off to this angel who will then take it where it needs to go.
Guide it.
Yeah, that's the one that's like, go through the light. And then what was that third term? Ashars, Asafs.
And Luis.
And Luis. Luis. Trying to find where I left off. Sorry, y'all. Think I was about here. Yeah, you had lots of chief. Yeah. Well, I lost the spot. Anyway. And I will allot unto a chief who is wise and experienced. Yep. Oh, N and Sewers. Or S and Sewers. That's right, ES apostrophe EN.
S and Sewers?
No. S and Naurs. ENAURS. EN SNRs. Heavenly musicians, whether vocalists or instrument players.
What's their role? They just play music?
That's all it says.
That's sick.
Yeah, right?
It's a cool gig. So you just get to play the heavenly music?
You could be a guardian angel. You could be like a transport angel, or you could just be a musician.
And you're playing the heavenly music as they travel through the ethereal. Crazy.
So yeah, he shall appoint from amongst you officers and messengers, Ashars, Asafs, and Esanars, and ye shall be numbered and apportioned unto your labor and places like unto my lower heavens on other worlds. And he who is chief shall be called God of this heaven and earth.
Like lowercase g God?
No, capital. Unto his making bestow I them. And God shall have a council and throne within this heavenly city, and the place shall be called Horeb, because it is the first kingdom of God in this firmament. And God shall rule on his throne, for it is his, and his council shall rule with him. In my name shall they have dominion over angels and mortals belonging to the earth.
Gotcha. So this is like the first level of like official like ranking within the,
right. So
system of heaven.
In the OAHSPE system, God is a positional title.
Yeah.
It's a positional title of that spiritual being who is in charge of the entire earthly
realm
plane, whether it be the corporeal earth and the heavens attached to it.
And all the spirits and stuff that are within it.
Right.
Cool.
So it's a rank, it's a position, it's not the creator of the universe.
Right.
That is Jehovah in this.
Right.
So God has a different meaning.
Okay.
It's very bureaucratic.
I was going to say, yeah, seems like a lot of red tape.
And God shall appoint chiefs under him, who shall go down and dwell on the earth with mortals, and such chiefs' labor shall be with mortals for their resurrection. And these chiefs shall be called lords, for they are gods of land, which is the lowest rank of my commissioned gods.
Interesting. So these are kind of like the potential like immortals.
Yeah.
That have been on.
They come down to earth, and their job is to make sure that man.
Well, and their job is to help with the reincarnation, and to help with the worldly stuff.
Well, the resurrection, not the reincarnation.
It does, yeah, it says resurrection, huh?
So, it's basically its job is to help men transition after they die, or make sure that they try and live a spiritual life in the first place.
Yeah, so maybe they're the leader, the spiritual leaders of the earth itself, to help guide the population in such a direction to maintain the order of the...
But I think they're still spirits, and I think they're still not necessarily appearing as corporeal.
But they dwell with man, and they say...
They're on the corporeal earth, but they're probably in spirit form.
So maybe
kind of what I'm gathering.
Yeah, so maybe they are the spirits of the earth. It's like, Mother Earth, and they take on these different...
Or they may just be like the deities of different religions around the world.
Sure. Okay.
And God and his lords shall have dominion from 200 years to 1,000 or more years, but never more than 3,000 years.
Interesting.
According to the regions of Dan, light into which I bring the earth, so shall be the teams of the office of my gods and my lords.
So every 3,000 years, you get a new team.
Yes.
New god.
Which is why this book gets really repetitive, because it covers all of those 3,000-year periods.
Okay.
And the different teams and what happened under them.
Okay.
So it can be a little repetitive when you're into that section.
Which maybe we can skip through and skip around and maybe go to different ages.
Yeah, or maybe like highlight the things that are different about these certain ones. Like we can go over a few of them to get the feel, but before the repetition really sets in, we can just start covering what's different between them.
Or maybe find the different 3,000-year periods where something happened that may correlate with something that happened that we historically remember.
Right.
If we can find
or that are interesting for one reason or another.
Yeah.
And God and his lords shall raise up officers to be their successors. By him and them shall they be appointed and crowned in my name.
I got you. So there's like nepotism within this system.
Well, they're picking...
they're trained.
They're picking the people to replace them, and then training them up. At the termination of the dominion of my God and his lords, they shall gather together in these my bound heavens all such angels as have been prepared in wisdom and strength for resurrection to my Etherean kingdoms. And these angels shall be called brides and bridegrooms to Jehovah, for they are mine and in my service. And to God and his lords, with the brides and bridegrooms, will I send down from Etheria ships in the time of Dan. By my Etherean gods and goddesses shall the ships descend to these heavens and receive God and his lords with the brides and bridegrooms and carry them up to the exalted regions I have prepared for them. So this is kind of where, it's painting its view of like how heaven in the afterlife works, right? Where there's this like bureaucratic system of rule, right? And all the humans as they die, like their spirit gets taken off into these lower heavens and like taught to be a spirit, like taught to live in the afterlife. And that at the time of the end of the Dan, then all the ones that are ready to move on out of the earth's heavens and into other places of the universe, they get promoted up
I see. But still within the system in which is being set forth.
Yeah, and then a new god and new lords get appointed, and
the previous.
A new time begins, and they start gathering the souls of the dead mortals and training them up for the next stock.
Interesting. Yeah, I would love to see how, like, I would love to see if they talk about, like, the incarnation of bodies and, or if there's any reincarnation, or if there's any of that going on anywhere at any time.
Didn't they mention that a little bit in the last one where...
I remember them talking briefly about reincarnation and...
Yeah.
I don't remember in what context.
Yeah, well, because he said at one point that he was going to stop the ability to reincarnate and make it so that all the humans born were like new souls.
Yeah, and it seemed like there was like it was kind of like free for all for a while, and until this system was like implemented by Jehovah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it sounds like it's just a matter of like a spirit going into a body.
Right. So maybe it is that even though you may have been promoted to another place, maybe you're just going to incarnate somewhere else, but that cycle universally throughout the universe could bring you back to a life on Earth.
I mean, that's if you even want to incarnate anymore, right? Like,
right.
Or need to.
Right.
Like,
and even because we don't even still within this
there
system,
seems to be
we don't
some
know
pros to being alive, but like until you've experienced the afterlife, you don't know what the pros versus the cons are.
Yeah,
right?
you don't know
so
the context of what it is. The experience would be like to be a non-incarnated being, spirit.
So if you're spiritually developed enough as a dead human spirit entity, you may not even desire
an
incarnation anymore. But
how we doing on this chapter?
Well, we're ready for a break, so I think we'll have to do that, because we got a decent amount.
Okay. All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll come back, and we will continue on with this chapter, all right?
All righty.
3? Yeah. There we go.
has forced into this relationship through these last couple of years. And can we take a moment to realize that you and I are just a phase in a series through our lives? 'Cause you'll change and I'll be that one. Guess who love you while it lasts, and guess a privilege to see. The days go by and these feelings grow apart. We'll say goodbye to the emotions in our heart. We'll gather wisdom and maybe we will see that we were too young to read love, and this wasn't meant to be.
Right. So yeah, I think we got a lot to get through with the OAHSPE. So maybe we'll hop right back into it.
All right. So we're on verse 18 here. So it says, "And all such as ascend shall be called a harvest unto me through my God and Lord's. And the time of my harvests shall be according to each Dan, which is 200 years, 400 years, 600 years, and 500 years. And these shall be called my lesser cycles, because they are the times of the tables of prophecies which I give unto my servants."
Interesting. So the harvest are the
souls that are ready to move on to the new Etherean worlds.
I see. So even though you may die, your soul moving is not necessarily gone from this realm.
Yeah.
Right away. It could be.
Yeah. Well,
you have to wait 100 years.
This sort of structure that they're like painting here is that you have the earth and you have these like heavens that are attached to the earth, and that when you die, you go into these heavens, which are basically, that goes into it later in the book, where they're basically like education centers for these spirits, teaching them how to be dead, basically.
Yeah,
it's like
be a spirit.
If you remember when we were doing like the Secret History, we were talking about like the Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah.
And how like, no, like the real, like the sleep, she went into sleep to become a human, right? And that like it's the human life that's the dream state, and then when you wake up, anyway, in a similar way, like if you die as a human, you're almost like being born as a spirit, right? So you're an infant spirit, and you may have gone through a human life, but you don't know shit about being a spirit necessarily, right? Unless you've reincarnated a bunch of times, and maybe you have at that point, but I don't know. Anyway, it sounds like there's a whole process for like learning.
Yeah, or just like, like maybe waking up
yeah,
is like disorienting in its own right, even if you have been there before, right?
Right. And then, yeah, after a certain level of, once you're ready, then you become one of the bride or bridegrooms.
And you are harvested into the next level.
Right. Meaning you're leaving the earth's heavens onto whatever other universal stop you're headed towards next.
Higher heavens.
Yeah. "But at no other times, nor in any other way, shall my harvest ascend to my emancipated worlds in Etheria. 7 Dans have I created for each and every Danha, and 6 generations of mortals have I given unto each Dan. The angels understood the commandments of Jehovah according to their knowledge in the ethereal heavens, being heirs of other planets and having died in infancy and having matured in the S-worlds, but they understood not the Creator according to the practice of the lower heavenly kingdoms, wherefore their knowledge was incomplete. Jehovah said, I condemn ye not because ye have become joint procreators with the Asuans, for ye have done two services unto me, which are to teach yourselves corporeal things, that ye may understand and sympathize with corporeans, and secondly, because ye have caused the earth to become peopled with such as are capable of immortality. So he's saying, like, these spirits that created humans, that it's giving them a chance to learn how to be corporeal, and it also created this group of beings that are capable of immortality. And so for those two reasons, like, they sort of did a favor to Jehovah in that act of creating humans.
I see.
That's how I read it anyway. Behold ye now what shall happen on the earth. Such as are of your flesh and kin who cohabit together shall rise in wisdom and virtue. But such of them as cohabit with the Asuans will bring forth heirs in the descending grade of life. The first shall bring forth heirs unto everlasting life, but the second shall bring forth heirs that shall go out in darkness. Interesting. Okay. So you're saying, like, if you keep doing it, basically, like, you're going to create a different kind of life that isn't necessarily
compatible or like
that isn't wanted. The ones that are capable of immortality. These are the ones that are going to go out in darkness. So
I see. So these are ones that aren't going to be able to become enlightened or rise through the heavens. They are simply limited to their one life, or this corporeal life.
Mm-hmm.
I see.
In the dominion of which matters your God and lords will instruct you, that ye may be by inspiration or otherwise, learn to control the behavior of mortals unto everlasting life, and that these labors be not too severe upon you. I create the Dans and Dan-Has in the firmament, wherein ye may be relieved from the watch by other angels from other worlds coming to exchange with you.
So it's giving them respite from their eternal damnation. I mean, damnation task of being like looking after the ones that they brought about.
Right.
So, but in a sense, Jehovah is saying that it is grateful that they did what they did, because it's giving them the opportunity, them the opportunity of eternal life, expanding the souls of the universe. It seems like this is maybe not the only, but one of the ways in which souls are corporeal life is inhabited, which allows for the souls to grow and to become part of the heavens, and then the higher heavens, and then part of the ultimate plan of Jehovah.
Right. This also do I put upon you, that to rule over mortals is virtue, by your own wills governing them in all things, is contrary to my commandments. For what honor hath any man if made to do a thing?
Right, so he's saying, like, doesn't want it to seem like a damnation or like some sort of like punishment, because if it's seen as a punishment and not as a virtue, then they will not take it seriously. Or
it's more like your job here is to guide mortals towards the everlasting life, right? But like, you can't be helicopter parents for them. You can't make all their decisions for them, because if you do, then what have they learned?
Yeah.
It's like the old parenting dilemma, right? Like you have to let your kids make mistakes, because if you just do everything for them, they don't have the ability to
do anything on their own.
To build their own discernment, right?
Yeah, build the character, the resilience, decision making.
So that's kind of what it's saying. It's like, here's your job, but here's your challenge. Is that you can't just do it for them. You can't like tell them every step of the way what they need to be doing.
Yeah, it also seems like Jehovah's trying to make it seem virtuous for them. Like, that this is a virtuous job. You are doing an important task, just like people try to tell parents you are doing a very important task, right? Mm-hmm. You are the parents of these children, and it is virtuous by nature of being the molders of their minds. But again, can't helicopter parent. You can't, just not pay attention to them either, because otherwise they'll get into some dangerous shit.
Right.
But
ye shall give mortals of my light, leaving them to choose. Better it is for them to suffer some than to grow up in ignorance of the stings of disobedience.
Okay.
Behold, I make this a willing service on your part, because ye have bound your affections on the earth. To your own kin, ye willingly become guardian angels over mortals. Yet I made not a separate law unto you. As it is with you, so shall it be with the spirits of these mortals when they are born into the S world. They will also desire to become guardian angels over their mortal kin. But these spirits, never having known my higher heavens, will be unsuitable for office of Ashars. They would be but the blind leading the blind. So the deceased mortals that are born as spirits, you can't just like become a guardian angel right away. Like you're you're a baby. Like,
yeah. You got to go through some schooling. You got to be trained. You got to learn.
Yeah.
You got to go through some trials yourself and, learn what it is to be the, Ashar. And I want to be the N-O-N-R?
Yeah, the weird word. The musicians.
The musicians, yeah.
Yeah,
that seems like a cool gig.
S-annuans or something.
Yeah, the SNRs or something.
To prevent which God and the Lord shall provide these spirits in the first resurrection with places to dwell in, and with occupations and opportunities for education. For I desire them not to remain bound to the earth, but to rise up and inherit my Etherean kingdoms. So there's a whole education plan set up for us after we die.
Yeah.
And in this also shall ye be discreet in governing them, giving them the light of my heavens with some liberty to choose and to perfect themselves. Otherwise, they would only be slaves in heaven. According to their weakness or strength, so shall ye provide for these new spirits entering my S world. And S world being like spirit world.
You're right.
Therefore, such of you as are appointed by my God and my lords as guardians over mortals shall be called Ashars, and ye shall report to your respective lords according to the section of the earth where ye may be. Of many watches shall be the Ashars.
Oh, so there's many of them. Like you were saying, these are like the spiritual characters throughout history that might be guiding.
Yeah.
Like based on your geographical region.
Yeah.
There might be a different lord. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And such of you as are appointed to receive the spirits of the dead into heaven shall be called Asafs. And ye shall report to your respective lords and their kingdoms. And the Ashars shall make a record of every mortal, of the grade of his wisdom and good works. And when a mortal dieth, and his spirit delivered into the Asafs, the record shall be delivered with him, and the Asaph receiving shall deliver such spirit with the record into such place in these heavens as is adapted to his grade, where he shall be put to labor and to school according to the place of the resurrections which I created. So you get a grade and a record of your life, and that determines your place in heaven and where
at least
your
your placement
starts.
Yeah, your placement.
Yeah.
It's like a placement test.
Right. As ye shall thus become organic in heaven, with rulers and teachers and physicians, and with capitals and cities and provinces, and with hospitals and nurseries and schools and factories, even so shall ye ultimately inspire man on earth to do the same things. So there's a whole
As above,
spirit
so below.
civilization. Yeah.
As above, so below.
And mortals that are raised up to dominion over mortals shall be called kings and emperors. As my gods, my lords are called my sons, so shall kings and emperors be called sons of God. Through him shall they be raised up to their places and given dominion unto my glory. And that's the end of that chapter.
Wow. Makes you think about like named gods on earth, like from the old kingdoms, Egypt, and these people who claim that they are gods on earth, and
the divine right to
rule and stuff like that. Yeah,
maybe
makes you think
maybe
that
there was a divine right to rule at some time.
Yeah,
it kind of makes you question things like whether or not that's actually ever was true. If it was true, did it ever stop being true because of like greed and corruption? And then like when you get to things like democracy and stuff, like how does that work?
How does that fit into something like this? If we are to take it as truth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's a new Dan, right? Like maybe the Dan's changed the dynamics on how things are run. There's a new team, right? Each time there's a new age, there's a new team, and maybe they decide to rule things in a different manner.
Yeah.
Maybe it just constantly is in change. Because we are essentially within this idea, we are essentially all at some point going to be part of this system. And maybe the system changes based on the groups of people who come through the system, right? Like maybe just as much as we can affect change in our world, the spirits can affect change within the lower heavens around the universe.
Interesting how the lower heavens are described in very much like terminology that makes it seem like a regular civilization, right?
But just an
libraries
ethereal
and doctors and nurseries and
yeah, it makes it seem like you are not physical. Like, well, we don't know. There might be a whole physical aspect to the whole thing too, right? Or it's semi-physical. It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's it seems the same as if you were living a life, but not the same. Like there's there's no need for hunger, or like there's not the same bodily needs or stuff like that, but there's still spiritual needs,
same
and there's still
rules, right? As far as like the physics of being spirit, right?
Right.
But like, let's say for instance that like all this hypothesized dark matter is just all this like spiritual material surrounding, and that we can't necessarily detect because it doesn't interact with the physical in the same way, but it does interact gravitationally or whatever. But
it itself is hiding its own.
Spirit matter may pass straight through physical matter, but spirit matter may still be able to interact with spirit matter. Like there may be its own chemistry in that sort of, and its own physics and whatnot.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like the upside down and like, you know, that idea of like the world within a world or the world without a world, you know, like this idea of like it is basically everything that we see and feel and touch now, but with different physics to it. Like there may not be, you know, the same type of textures and, you know, the same understanding of how things work.
Yeah.
Like things might work differently, but still in your mind, you could, it feels the same.
I also find it intriguing, this idea of like dying as a mortal is like being born as a spirit.
Yeah.
And this idea that you might need like education and you have to learn
and rearing
how to be a spirit the same way a baby needs to learn how to be a human, right?
Yeah. It is a
what
fascinating...
that process would be like.
Yeah, it is a
and
fascinating
then like the whole
way to think about it.
Idea of like the record being kept about you by your guardian angel, and they
give you a grade and they place you based on your grade and stuff.
But it makes me think of things like the life flashing before your eyes experiences, the life reviews, like find it pretty intriguing.
And these things are like the idea of the life review is so, you know, similar across the world and all the different spiritual, you know, paths chosen.
Happens a lot with the near-death experiences and
hallucinations, even like you see people that go through similar, you know, instances or experiences. It's very fascinating. I like this topic. I think it kind of has, at least so far, as pick and choose. It's kind of picking and choosing. At least I'm able to pick and choose a lot of what this seems to be coming from throughout all the time and all of the different things that we've talked about and different spiritual books. And
it kind of sits itself and it like connects to like these like spiritual teachings we've gone over, and it connects to this like UFO lore and like religious lore and like
and then contemporary stuff that's going on now.
Plus like it seems to have propositions like scientifically for how the universe works and whatnot, so it's pretty interesting. But we still have one chapter of that book to finish out. It's only about a page, but based on the rate we're doing, that's like at least a segment on our next show. So
okay, cool. Well, appreciate y'all hanging out with us. This was another installment of OAHSPE. We'll probably do a little bit more on our next episode. We're going to be trying to get our next studio up and running too, so that'll be, you know, in the works in the next few weeks. And appreciate y'all hanging out with us. If you guys like this stuff, comment, share, let us know what you guys are thinking about these topics and whether you like it, you want some more UFOs, you want some more of this topic, that topic, let us know. We're open for any type of commentary. You guys can find our website. It's dualitycheck.net. It's got links and all the show notes, everything that you guys want for our episode will be there.
It's got all your ways to contact us and follow us, all our social media links.
You can find our YouTube there and our Rumble. If you guys want to watch our video content, you guys can go there and follow us on YouTube or Rumble.
And then you can find all of our episodes and click through them. You can also find a list of all of the topics we go over. And the ones that are bigger have more like topics that we've covered. So like
they're part of more
reincarnation, you can click on that. And then here's all the episodes where we're talking about it.
Yeah, and this one will probably be in that category. We've talked about it a couple times. At least comes up a bit.
Yeah, right.
Please like, comment, subscribe, follow, share. Those things really help us out and get the podcast in front of more people. So, appreciate y'all hanging out with us this week.
Okay, we'll see you guys next week.
See you next time. Later.
Adios.